The alarm bell rang across the massive space station called Nexus Prime. Thousands of young aliens rushed through the metal hallways, their feet making different sounds on the floor. Some clattered with hard claws, others padded silently, and a few made wet slapping noises. Cadet Zixtar tried to keep up with the crowd, but his short legs could not match the pace of the larger students. His blue skin looked pale under the bright lights, and the small gills on his neck fluttered fast as he breathed. Water droplets fell from his skin onto the floor behind him. The Galactic Military Academy was the most important school in known space. Students came from hundreds of different planets to learn how to fight, lead, and protect the galaxy. But not everyone was welcome here. Only the strong survived the training. Zixtar belonged to the Kalari people. His species lived in the deep oceans of their water world. They were smart and peaceful. Their minds could solve problems that other species found impossible. But here at the Academy, intelligence meant nothing if you could not fight. A massive shadow fell over Zixtar as he walked. He looked up to see Grokmar towering above him. The Craxi cadet was twice as tall as Zixtar, and covered in thick gray skin that looked like armor. His red eyes glowed as he smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Watch where you swim, little fish," Grokmar said in his deep voice. He pushed Zixtar with one finger, sending the small alien stumbling into the wall. Other students laughed as they walked past. Nobody helped Zixtar get back on his feet. This was normal at the Academy. The strong ruled, and the weak suffered. Zixtar picked up his books and continued walking. His breathing mask had cracked when he hit the wall, but he did not have time to fix it. Classes would start soon, and being late meant extra training with the combat instructors. In the shadows near the ceiling, Sarah Chen watched everything happen. She moved along the maintenance walkways that most students ignored. Her small size let her climb into spaces that others could not reach. She had learned to stay hidden and watch. Sarah was one of only 12 humans at the Academy. Her species was new to the Galactic Coalition. Most aliens did not know much about Earth or its people. They saw humans as weak because they had no natural weapons, no thick skin, and no special abilities. The Academy was built like a giant wheel spinning in space. Different sections held classrooms, training rooms, living quarters, and the command center. Each section had its own gravity and air mixture to help different species feel comfortable. Sarah watched Grokmar and his friends follow Zixtar down the hallway. The Craxi species loved to fight. Their home planet was a place where only the strongest survived. They brought that thinking to the Academy. In the classroom, students sat in groups based on their species. The Craxi sat together in the back, their large bodies taking up extra space. The Vorth, covered in their metal armor, clustered near the weapons display. The peaceful plant people, called Salari, stayed near the windows where they could absorb sunlight. Humans sat alone. Sarah took a seat in the middle of the room where she could see everyone. She noticed how other students moved away when she got close. They were not afraid of her. They just did not understand her species yet. Instructor Vexani entered the room. She was a tall, thin alien with purple skin and 4 arms. Her species, the Zenthari, were known for their strict military discipline. She had trained thousands of cadets over the years. "Today we study battle formations," Instructor Vexani announced. "You will work in teams of 5. Choose your partners now." The room filled with noise as students moved around to form groups. The strong species picked each other quickly. Zixtar sat alone at his desk, water dripping from his damaged breathing mask. Nobody wanted a weak teammate. Sarah stood up and walked over to Zixtar. The room became quiet as other students watched her. "Want to be on my team?" Sarah asked in simple galactic standard. Zixtar looked up with surprise. His large eyes were a deep blue color, like the ocean on his home planet. "You want to work with me?" he asked quietly. "Smart teammates are better than strong ones," Sarah said. Grokmar laughed loudly from the back of the room. "The soft human wants the weak fish. They can lose together." Other students joined the laughter. Sarah ignored them and sat down next to Zixtar. She had learned that words could not hurt her, but she remembered the feeling of anger building inside her chest. During the lesson, Zixtar showed Sarah his ideas for battle formations. His thin fingers drew diagrams on his tablet that were better than anything the instructor had shown them. His mind could see patterns and weaknesses that others missed. "This is amazing," Sarah said as she studied his work. "You could win battles without fighting." Zixtar's skin changed to a slightly brighter blue. This was how his species showed happiness. "Nobody else thinks my ideas are good. Nobody else is smart enough to understand them," Sarah replied. After class, Sarah walked with Zixtar toward the dining hall. Other students moved out of their way, but not from respect. They just did not want to be associated with the two weakest cadets in school. The dining hall was huge, with tables that could change size and shape for different species. The air smelled like a mixture of foods from 100 different worlds. Some smells were pleasant, others made Sarah want to hold her breath. Sarah and Zixtar found an empty table in the corner. Zixtar needed to eat special nutrients that came in liquid form. Sarah ate standard protein blocks that tasted like cardboard but contained everything humans needed. "Why did you choose me as a partner?" Zixtar asked, as he sipped his meal through a tube. Sarah thought about her answer. She remembered her younger brother back on Earth. He was small and smart, just like Zixtar. Bullies had made his life difficult until Sarah learned to protect him. "Because you reminded me of someone important," she said finally. As they ate, Sarah noticed Grokmar and his friends watching them from across the room. The Craxi leader was planning something. She could see it in his red eyes, and the way he talked quietly with the others. Sarah felt her muscles tense up. Her heart started beating faster. Something inside her brain began to change, getting ready for danger. She did not understand what was happening to her body, but she knew that trouble was coming for Zixtar, and when it came, she would be ready. The next few weeks at the academy became a nightmare for Zixtar. What started as simple pushing and name-calling grew into something much worse. Grokmar seemed to take pleasure in making the small Kalari cadet's life miserable. Every morning, Zixtar would find his books scattered across his room floor. His breathing equipment would be damaged or hidden. Someone always spilled food on him in the dining hall, and his homework would disappear from his desk. Sarah watched it all happen. She saw how Grokmar and his 3 friends worked together like a pack of predators. They never attacked when instructors were watching. They were smart about their cruelty. The Craxi species had a natural ability that made them dangerous. Their bodies could create electricity, like some fish on Earth. They used this power to give small, painful shocks to other students. The academy rules said this was only allowed during combat training, but the instructors never seemed to notice when it happened in the hallways. Zixtar tried to report the bullying to the academy staff. He went to his dorm supervisor, a tired-looking Zenthari named Kolvex. "These things happen," Kolvex said without looking up from his paperwork. "The academy is supposed to be difficult. If you cannot handle the pressure, maybe you should transfer to a civilian school." "But they are breaking the rules," Zixtar said quietly. "They use their electricity powers outside of training." Kolvex finally looked at him. "Do you have proof? Video recordings? Witnesses?" Zixtar's shoulders dropped. Nobody would testify against Grokmar. The other students either feared him or respected his strength. "No, sir." "Then there is nothing I can do. Learn to stand up for yourself, cadet. The galaxy is a dangerous place." Sarah heard about this conversation from Zixtar during one of their study sessions. They had found a quiet corner in the academy's large library, where they could work together on their assignments. "It's not fair," Sarah said, her hands forming fists on the table. "Fair is not important here," Zixtar replied sadly. "Only strength matters. My people are not warriors. We solve problems with our minds, not our bodies." "Your mind is your strength," Sarah insisted. "You're smarter than all of them combined." Zixtar's skin flickered between blue and gray, showing his mixed emotions. Smart does not stop electric shocks. Smart does not heal broken bones. The attacks grew worse over the following days. Grokmar discovered that Zixtar needed to return to his room every few hours to soak in a special water tank. This was how Kalari kept their skin healthy and their gills working properly. One afternoon, Zixtar rushed back to his room after a long physics class. His skin was starting to crack, and his breathing was becoming difficult. He opened his door and found his water tank filled with cleaning chemicals. The smell burned his nose and made his eyes water. "No, no, no," he whispered, staring at the ruined tank. Without this treatment, he would become sick within hours. His body was not designed to live in the dry air of the space station for very long. He heard laughter from the hallway. Grokmar and his friends stood outside the door, watching Zixtar's panic with amusement. "Oops," Grokmar said with a fake smile. "Someone must have made a mistake with the water system. These accidents happen sometimes. Please," Zixtar begged. "I need clean water, or I will get sick." "Maybe you should have thought about that before you embarrassed me in tactics class," Grokmar growled. The day before, Zixtar had correctly answered a question about fleet movements that Grokmar had gotten wrong. The Craxi did not like being shown up by someone he considered weak. "Here's some water for you," one of Grokmar's friends said. He poured his drinking water onto the floor, mixing it with the dirt from his boots. The other bullies laughed. Zixtar collapsed to his knees as his breathing became more difficult. His skin was turning a sick gray color, and his gills were struggling to process the dry air. Sarah found him 20 minutes later, unconscious on his room floor. She immediately called for medical help and stayed with him as the academy doctors worked to stabilize his condition. In the medical bay, Zixtar lay connected to machines that helped him breathe and kept his skin moist. Sarah sat beside his bed, watching his chest rise and fall slowly. Dr. Helix, the academy's chief medical officer, approached Sarah with a concerned expression. She was a member of the Thessian species, known for their healing abilities and wisdom. "He will recover," Dr. Helix said gently. But this was serious. Another hour without treatment, and he could have died. "Someone poisoned his water tank," Sarah said, her voice tight with anger. "I suspected as much. This is not the first suspicious injury I have treated this month." Dr. Helix looked at Sarah carefully. "Several students have come here with injuries that seem deliberate. Why doesn't anyone stop it? The academy believes that conflict builds character. They think that students need to learn to defend themselves." Dr. Helix shook her head sadly. "But there is a difference between fair competition and targeted cruelty." Sarah spent the next 3 days visiting Zixtar in the medical bay. When he finally returned to classes, his movements were slower and more careful. The attack had weakened him both physically and mentally, but Grokmar was not finished with him. If anything, seeing Zixtar in the medical bay seemed to encourage the Craxi bully. He began targeting other small or weak students as well, building a reputation as someone to be feared. Sarah watched Grokmar's behavior carefully, memorizing his patterns and methods. She noticed that he always chose isolated locations for his worst attacks. He preferred times when instructors were busy with other duties. He was a coward who only fought when he was sure to win. During combat training, Sarah began pushing herself harder than ever before. She stayed after class to practice with the training equipment. Her human body was not as large or armored as many other species, but she discovered that it had its own advantages. She was fast and flexible. Her hands were precise and strong. Most importantly, she had something that many of the other students lacked: pure determination. One evening, while practicing alone in the gym, Sarah overheard 2 Vorth cadets talking near the equipment storage. "Grokmar is planning something big for the fish," one of them said in their mechanical-sounding language. "Poor creature," the other replied. "But it is not our concern. The Craxi will do what they want." Sarah felt her heart start beating faster. She knew they were talking about Zixtar. Whatever Grokmar was planning would be worse than anything he had done before. She found Zixtar in the library that night, studying alone as usual. His skin still looked pale, and he moved carefully to avoid putting strain on his recently healed gills. "You need to be extra careful," Sarah warned him. "I think Grokmar is planning something." Zixtar looked up from his books with tired eyes. "He plans something every day. I cannot hide forever. Then we need to find a way to stop him." "How?" Zixtar asked sadly. "You are strong for a human, but you are still just one person. Grokmar has friends, and they all have electric powers. If you try to help me, They will hurt you too. Sarah stared at her friend, seeing the defeat in his posture. The bullies had broken his spirit as much as they had damaged his body. But something inside, Sarah refused to accept this situation. Let me worry about that, she said firmly. That night, Sarah lay in her bed thinking about Earth and her family. She thought about all the times she had protected her younger brother from bullies. She remembered the feeling of standing up to people who thought they could hurt others without consequences. Tomorrow, she would be ready for whatever Grokmar was planning. She did not know exactly how she would stop him, but she knew that she would not let him hurt Zixtar again. Outside her window, the stars shone coldly in the darkness of space. But inside Sarah's chest, a fire was growing that would soon burn brighter than any sun. The attack came during what should have been a normal afternoon training session. Gymnasium 7 was scheduled for individual fitness testing, which meant students could work alone on their physical development. It was the perfect time for Grokmar to strike. Sarah had finished her exercises early and was heading to the equipment storage to put away her gear when she heard voices coming from the back of the gymnasium. She recognized Grokmar's deep laugh immediately. She moved quietly along the wall, staying in the shadows. Through a gap between storage containers, she could see what was happening, and her blood turned cold. Zixtar was on the floor, curled up in a tight ball. His breathing equipment lay broken beside him, the clear tubes cracked and leaking. 3 of Grokmar's friends stood around him in a circle, while the Kraxi leader loomed over his victim. "Please," Zixtar gasped, his gills fluttering rapidly as he struggled to breathe. "I cannot. I need my equipment. You need to learn your place, little fish." Grokmar snarled. He raised his massive foot and brought it down on Zixtar's side. The sound of the impact echoed through the storage area. Zixtar cried out, a high-pitched sound of pain that made Sarah's heart clench. Blue liquid seeped from between his fingers where he was clutching his ribs. "The weak have no place in this academy," one of Grokmar's friends said. This was Theknor, another Kraxi who was almost as large as their leader. "Perhaps if we hurt you enough, you will finally leave." They had planned this carefully. The storage area was hidden from the main gymnasium floor. No instructors would come here during individual training time. They could take as long as they wanted to break Zixtar's spirit and body. Sarah watched in horror as Grokmar drew back his foot for another kick. This one would aim for Zixtar's head. At the Kraxi's size and strength, such a blow could kill the small Kalari cadet. Something snapped inside Sarah's mind. The careful control she had maintained for weeks suddenly shattered. Her vision became sharp and clear, as if someone had removed a fog she had not realized was there. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. Time seemed to slow down. She could see every detail of the scene. The dust motes floating in the air, the way Zixtar's skin had turned a sickly pale color, the cruel smile spreading across Grokmar's face as he prepared to deliver a potentially fatal blow. Sarah looked at the wall that separated her from her friend. It was made of reinforced polymer, the same material used to build starship hulls. The Academy engineers had designed it to withstand weapons, fire, and explosive decompression. It was supposed to be indestructible, but Sarah was no longer thinking about what was supposed to be possible. She was thinking about her friend dying, while she stood helplessly on the wrong side of a wall. She drew back her right fist. Somewhere in the back of her mind, she knew this was impossible. Humans were not supposed to be able to break through military-grade barriers with their bare hands, but that logical voice was drowned out by a much more powerful feeling. Nobody was going to hurt Zixtar while she could still draw breath. Sarah punched the wall with every ounce of strength in her body. But it was more than just physical strength. Something primal and ancient had awakened inside her. A genetic memory of what humans had once been when they hunted creatures 10 times their size across the African plains. The reinforced polymer exploded inward like it was made of glass. The sound was incredible, a thunderous crack that echoed through the entire gymnasium. Chunks of wall material flew across the storage area, and a cloud of dust filled the air. Through the hole she had created, Sarah stepped into the storage area. Her knuckles were scraped and bleeding, but she felt no pain. Her dark eyes burned with a fury that made even Grokmar take a step backward. "Step away from him, now." Her voice was quiet, but it carried the kind of menace that every species in the galaxy understood. It was the sound of a predator that had decided to hunt. The four Craxi bullies stared at her in shock. Grokmar's foot was still raised to kick Zixtar, but he had frozen in place like a statue. "What? How did you?" Theknor stammered, looking back and forth between Sarah and the destroyed wall. "I said step away," Sarah repeated, taking another step forward. There was something different about the way she moved now. Each step was precise and controlled, like a hunter stalking prey. Grokmar finally found his voice. "You are just one small human. We are 4 Craxi warriors. Do you think you can fight all of us?" Sarah's answer was simple and terrifying. Yes. The first Craxi to attack her was not Grokmar, but one of his followers named Zektar. He was young and eager to prove himself. He rushed at Sarah with his arms spread wide, planning to grab her and shock her with his natural electricity. Sarah moved like water flowing around a rock. She stepped to the side at the last second, grabbed Zektar's arm, and used his own momentum to throw him into a stack of equipment containers. The metal boxes crashed down on him with a tremendous noise. The second attacker tried to approach from behind while Sarah was distracted. But she seemed to have eyes in the back of her head. She spun around and caught him with a punch to the center of his chest. He flew backward and hit the wall so hard that the metal panels dented. Theknor activated his electrical abilities, blue sparks dancing across his skin. "Let us see how you handle this, human." He reached out to grab Sarah, electricity arcing between his fingers. But when his hand touched her arm, something unexpected happened. Sarah did not collapse in pain as he had expected. Instead, she grabbed his wrist and squeezed. Theknor screamed as his own electrical attack was somehow turned back on him. Sarah's grip was so strong that his thick Craxi bones began to crack under the pressure. "How are you doing this?" he gasped. "I don't know," Sarah replied honestly. "And I don't care." She released his wrist and pushed him away. Theknor stumbled backward, clutching his injured hand and staring at her with fear in his red eyes. Now only Grokmar remained standing. The largest and strongest of the bullies looked around at his defeated friends, then back at the small human girl who had destroyed them in less than a minute. "This is not possible," he said, his voice much quieter now. "Humans are weak. Your species has no natural weapons, no armor, no special abilities." Sarah walked over to where Zixtar lay curled on the floor. She knelt beside her friend and gently picked up his broken breathing equipment. Her hands were steady as she carefully fit the pieces back together, temporarily repairing the damage. "Breathe slowly," she told Zixtar softly. "Help is coming." Then she stood up and faced Grokmar again. The rage was still there in her eyes, but it was controlled now, focused like a laser beam. "You're right," she said calmly. "Humans don't have claws or armor or electricity. But we have something else. We have the ability to care about others more than we care about ourselves, and when someone threatens the people we care about." She looked at the destruction around them, the broken wall, the scattered equipment, the 3 Craxi cadets who were slowly picking themselves up from where she had thrown them. "When someone threatens our friends, we become something that your species can't understand. We become unstoppable." Grokmar took another step backward. For the first time in his life, the massive Craxi warrior was afraid. In the distance, alarms began to ring. Security personnel would arrive soon. The confrontation was over, but everyone in that room knew that something had changed forever. The quiet human girl had revealed a truth that would reshape everything they thought they knew about strength, weakness, and the power of protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Within minutes of the alarms, Gymnasium 7 was filled with Academy security personnel, medical teams, and senior instructors. They stared in disbelief at the scene before them, a massive hole in what was supposed to be an indestructible wall, 3 injured Craxi cadets, and 1 small human girl with bloodied knuckles. Sarah sat beside Zixtar as Dr. Helix worked to stabilize his breathing. The Kalari cadet was conscious but weak, his skin slowly returning to its normal blue color as the medical equipment helped his damaged gills process oxygen. "What happened here?" demanded Admiral Thexori, the Academy's commanding officer. She was a tall, imposing member of the Altarian species. with golden skin that gleamed under the bright lights. The room fell silent. Gruckmar and his friends looked at each other uncertainly. They had been caught in the act of seriously injuring another student, which could result in their expulsion from the academy. But admitting that a single human had defeated all four of them would be even more humiliating. There was an accident during training, Gruckmar said carefully. The wall must have had a structural weakness. Admiral Thexori walked over to examine the destroyed barrier. She ran her fingers along the edges of the hole, noting how the metal had been bent outward from the inside. Structural weakness, she repeated slowly. In a wall designed to withstand plasma cannon fire. A wall that was inspected and certified safe just last month. She turned to look at Sarah, who was still kneeling beside Zixtar. Cadet Chen. What is your version of events? Sarah looked up, her brown eyes clear and steady. I saw 4 students attacking 1 injured student. I stopped them. By punching through a reinforced polymer barrier? Yes, ma'am. The simplicity of her answer seemed to disturb Admiral Thexori more than a detailed explanation would have. Stand up, Cadet. John. Sarah carefully helped Zixtar into a more comfortable position, then rose to face the Admiral. Her uniform was dirty and torn, and blood still dripped from her knuckles. But she stood straight and calm. Medical scan. Immediately, Admiral Thexori ordered. 2 technicians approached Sarah with portable scanning equipment. They ran sensors over her entire body, checking for cybernetic implants, genetic modifications, or hidden weapons. The results appeared on their screens within seconds. No artificial enhancements detected, the lead technician reported. No foreign objects or chemical amplifiers. Adrenaline levels are elevated, but within normal human parameters. That's impossible, muttered Commander Yelkith, the Academy's chief of security. No organic being can generate that kind of force without enhancement. Admiral Thexori studied Sarah with new interest. Cadet Chen, your species files indicate that humans are a peaceful species from a garden world. Non-aggressive, limited physical capabilities, no natural weapons. Those files are wrong, ma'am, Sarah said quietly. Explain. Sarah looked around the room at all the aliens staring at her. She thought about Earth, about the storms and earthquakes, the predators and diseases that her ancestors had survived for millions of years. She thought about the genetic programming hidden in every human cell, waiting to be activated when survival demanded it. Earth isn't a garden world, she began. It's what you would call a death world. Everything there is trying to kill everything else. The weather can freeze you, or burn you, or blow you away. The animals have claws, and teeth, and venom. Even the plants can be deadly. The room was completely silent now. Even the injured Craxi had stopped groaning to listen. My people didn't evolve as the strongest species on our planet, Sarah continued. We evolved as survivors. We learned to run farther than anything else could chase us. We learned to throw rocks and sticks with perfect accuracy. We learned to hunt creatures 10 times our size by working together and never giving up. She held up her bleeding hand. Our bones are dense and strong. Our muscles have hidden reserves that activate in emergencies. Our minds can calculate trajectory and force without conscious thought, and when someone we care about is in danger, she looked down at Zixtar, who was watching her with wonder in his large blue eyes. When someone we care about is in danger, all of those millions of years of survival instinct wake up at once. Dr. Helix looked up from her medical work. That would explain the blood test results. Cadet Chen's system shows traces of over a dozen combat enhancement chemicals that her body produced naturally. Adrenaline, endorphins, cortisol, dopamine. It's like her entire biochemistry shifted into a different mode. A berserker state, Admiral Thexori murmured. We have historical records of such things from warrior species. But they are usually triggered by personal threat, not by seeing others in danger, Sarah finished. That's what makes humans different. We don't just fight for ourselves. We fight for our pack, our tribe, our family. And sometimes, we fight for anyone who needs protection. Over the next several hours, the Academy went into crisis mode. Emergency meetings were held among the senior staff. Urgent messages were sent to the Galactic Coalition headquarters. Most importantly, the restricted files on Earth and its inhabitants were finally opened and studied. What they found horrified and amazed them in equal measure. Earth was indeed a death world, rated Class 9 on the habitability scale, barely suitable for most known life forms. The planet was regularly struck by massive asteroids, torn by earthquakes, scorched by solar radiation, and ravaged by ice ages. The native life forms had adapted by becoming incredibly resilient and aggressive. Humans were not the strongest species on their world. They were not even close. But they were the most persistent, the most adaptable, and the most willing to work together. They had hunted mammoth and saber-toothed cats using nothing but coordination and determination. They had survived disasters that had wiped out countless other species. Most disturbing of all, they had done this while developing complex social bonds and moral codes. They did not fight just to survive. They fought to protect others. "We have made a serious mistake," Admiral Thex Ori told the assembled senior staff. "We evaluated humans based on their peaceful application to join the coalition. We assumed that a species seeking cooperation must be weak. But they are weak," protested Commander Yelkith. "Look at their physical specifications. No natural armor, no claws, no venom." "No," said Professor Wex Mel, the Academy's leading expert on xenobiology. "They are not weak. They are restrained. There is a difference. Everything I am reading suggests that humans are natural persistence predators with social pack bonding. They chose to approach us peacefully not because they had to, but because they wanted to." Meanwhile, in the medical bay, Sarah sat beside Zixtar's bed as her friend recovered. Word of the incident had spread throughout the Academy faster than official announcements. Students whispered in the hallways about the human who had broken through a starship hull with her bare hands. "Are you in trouble?" Zixtar asked weakly. "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "Maybe. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I couldn't watch them hurt you anymore." Zixtar's skin shifted to a warm blue color that indicated deep gratitude. "My people have a saying. True strength is using your power to protect those who cannot protect themselves." Sarah smiled. "My people have a saying too. Speak softly and carry a big stick." "What does that mean?" "It means that the most dangerous people are often the quietest ones. They don't need to threaten or boast. They just act when action is needed." That evening, Admiral Thex Ori visited Sarah in her quarters. The human cadet was sitting at her desk, writing a report about the incident with careful precision. "Cadet Chen," the Admiral said, "you have created quite a situation. 4 injured students, significant property damage, and a complete revision of how we understand your species." "Yes, ma'am. I accept full responsibility for my actions." "Do you regret what you did?" Sarah looked up from her report. Her hand was bandaged, but her eyes were clear and determined. "No, ma'am. I regret that it was necessary, but I don't regret protecting my friend." Admiral Thex Ori studied the young human for a long moment. "The coalition will want to interview you. They will want to understand what happened here, and what it means for human-alien relations. Will Zixtar be safe? Grokmar and his associates are facing formal charges for assault and endangering a fellow cadet. They will likely be expelled from the Academy. As for the broader question of cadet safety," Admiral Thex Ori paused. "Let us just say that attitudes are changing rapidly." After the Admiral left, Sarah returned to her report. But her mind was on Earth, on her family, and on the new responsibility she now carried. She had revealed something about humanity that could not be hidden again. The galaxy now knew that humans were not the peaceful, harmless species they had pretended to be. They were something much more complex and potentially much more dangerous. But they were also something the galaxy desperately needed. Protectors who fought not for conquest or glory, but for justice and compassion. Outside her window, the stars shone as they always had. But everything else was about to change. 3 months after the incident in Gymnasium 7, the Galactic Military Academy was a very different place. The changes started small but quickly grew into something that transformed the entire institution. Sarah walked through the hallways with Zixtar beside her, and other students no longer moved away from them. Instead, they watched with a mixture of respect and curiosity. The story of what had happened had spread throughout the galaxy, becoming legend among military academies on dozens of worlds. Grokmar and his 3 followers had been expelled, as Admiral Thexori had predicted. But their removal was just the beginning of the changes sweeping through the academy. The old hierarchy based purely on physical strength was crumbling, replaced by something more complex and fair. "The tactical simulation results are ready," Zixtar announced, reading from his tablet as they walked to their next class. His breathing equipment had been replaced with a newer, more durable model, and his skin had returned to its healthy blue color. "How did we do?" Sarah asked. "First place again. The instructors are calling our strategies revolutionary." Zixtar's skin brightened with pride. "Your idea to combine human persistence tactics with Kalari mathematical precision has created something neither species could achieve alone." This was the real change at the academy. Students were no longer just competing against each other. They were learning to work together, combining the unique abilities of different species to create teams that were stronger than the sum of their parts. In their advanced strategy class, Professor Meltari presented their latest assignment. She was a Vorth, her metallic armor gleaming as she addressed the mixed group of students. "Today you will plan a rescue operation for civilians trapped on a hostile planet," she announced. "You have 3 hours to develop a complete strategy using only the resources available to a standard coalition frigate." The class immediately began forming teams. But unlike the old days when students grouped by species, the teams now mixed different types of aliens together. A massive Kraxi warrior worked with a delicate Solari plant person. Armored Vorth paired with ethereal energy beings called Luxani. Sarah and Zixtar joined a team that included Yelandra, a young Altarian with golden skin and natural telepathic abilities, and Kexorth, a member of the rock-like golem species who could survive in any environment. "What do we know about the planet?" Sarah asked as the team gathered around their planning table. "High gravity, toxic atmosphere, extreme temperatures," Yelandra reported, reading from her datapad. "The native species are aggressive and territorial. Standard approach would be orbital bombardment, followed by heavy troop deployment. That would kill the civilians," Zixtar pointed out. "We need precision, not overwhelming force." Kexorth's gravelly voice rumbled through the conversation. "My people could survive the surface conditions, but we move too slowly for a rescue operation." Sarah studied the planetary data, her mind working through possibilities. Over the past months, she had learned to understand and appreciate the unique abilities of each species. More importantly, she had learned how to combine them effectively. "What if we don't fight the planet at all?" she said slowly. "What if we work with it?" The others looked at her curiously. "Zixtar, your people are the best navigators in the galaxy. Could you plot a course through the planet's storm systems that would hide our approach?" "Possibly," he replied, already running calculations on his tablet. "The electromagnetic interference would mask our ship's signatures, but the route would be extremely dangerous." "Yelandra, could your telepathic abilities communicate with the native species? Find out what they want instead of just fighting them?" The Altarian's golden skin shimmered as she considered this. "It would be difficult. Their minds are very alien. But if I had time to study their thought patterns, and Kexorth, what if we used your people's natural immunity to environmental hazards to establish safe zones for the civilians while the rest of us handle the evacuation?" The golem's eyes glowed with understanding. "A gradual withdrawal instead of a rushed escape." Yes, that could work. As they developed their plan, other teams around the room were taking more traditional approaches. The old academy would have rewarded the strategies that used the most firepower or showed the most individual heroics. But Professor Meltari was watching their unconventional collaboration with great interest. When time was called, each team presented their rescue plan to the class. Most involved variants of the same basic strategy: overwhelm the enemy with superior force and extract the civilians as quickly as possible. Then it was Sarah's team's turn. Zixtar stood up to present their strategy, his voice clear and confident. The shy, frightened cadet, who had once been beaten in storage areas, was gone, replaced by someone who had learned to value his own intelligence and contributions. Our plan is based on cooperation rather than conquest, he began. Instead of fighting the planet and its inhabitants, we propose working with both. He explained how they would use the storm systems for concealment, negotiate with the native species through telepathic contact, and establish safe zones using environmental-resistant team members. The evacuation would take longer than a military assault, but it would save more lives and potentially create new allies instead of enemies. The room was quiet when he finished. Then Professor Meltari began asking questions, probing the details of their strategy. With each answer, her expression grew more interested. "This is highly unconventional," she said finally. "It requires precise coordination between species with very different abilities. One mistake could doom the entire operation." "Yes, ma'am," Sarah agreed. "But if it works, everyone wins. The civilians are saved, the native species aren't driven from their world, and the coalition gains new allies instead of new enemies." Professor Meltari made notes on her tablet. "Team 4 has presented what I believe is the most sophisticated strategy we have seen this semester. They have demonstrated that diversity of thinking is often more valuable than uniformity of approach." After class, the 4 teammates walked together toward the dining hall. This had become their daily routine, sharing meals and discussing their studies. They had learned to accommodate each other's needs. Zixtar's liquid nutrition, Yelandra's requirement for high-energy foods, Kexorth's mineral supplements, and Sarah's simple human diet. "I have news," Yelandra announced as they found their usual table. "My family sent a message from our home system. The Coalition has officially redesigned the threat assessment protocols for new species." Andra Center. "What does that mean?" Sarah asked. "It means they will no longer assume that peaceful species are weak species," Kexorth rumbled approvingly. "Your incident has made them realize that some of the most dangerous beings are those who choose not to fight unless they must." Zixtar's skin shifted to a pattern that indicated deep thought. "Perhaps this will prevent future conflicts. Too many species have been underestimated or dismissed because they preferred diplomacy to warfare." Sarah felt a mixed sense of pride and responsibility. The revelation about human capabilities had indeed changed how the galaxy viewed her species, but it also meant that humans would now be watched more carefully. Earth's application to join the Coalition as equals rather than junior partners had been fast-tracked. But it came with new expectations and obligations. "Speaking of changes," Sarah said, "Admiral Thexori wants to see me tomorrow." She said something about a special assignment. The others exchanged glances. Over the months, Sarah had become something of a celebrity at the academy. But she had worked hard to maintain her focus on her studies and her friends. The next morning, Sarah reported to Admiral Thexori's office. The commanding officer's quarters were decorated with artifacts from dozens of different worlds, representing the diversity of the Coalition. "Sit down, Cadet Chen," the Admiral said. "I have a proposition for you." Sarah remained standing at attention. "Ma'am, the Coalition has decided to establish a new program. Mixed species tactical teams, designed to handle situations that require both military precision and diplomatic sensitivity. Your performance here has convinced them that such teams could be highly effective." Admiral Thexori walked over to her window, looking out at the stars beyond. "They want you to help design the training program. And eventually, they want you to lead one of these teams. With respect, ma'am, I'm still a cadet. Today you are. But you graduate in 2 months, and your test scores place you in the top 5% of your class. More importantly, you have demonstrated something that cannot be taught: the ability to inspire others to be better than they thought possible." Sarah thought about Zixtar, who had grown from a frightened victim into a confident strategist. She thought about her other teammates, who had learned to value each other's differences rather than seeing them as weaknesses. "Would my current team be involved in this program?" she asked. Admiral Thexori smiled. "Cadet Zixtar has already been recommended for the Navigation Specialist program. Cadet Yelandra is being considered for diplomatic corps training. Cadet Kexorth has applications pending from 3 different engineering divisions. So we would all continue working together? If that is what you choose. The galaxy has learned something important from watching your friendship develop. Some bonds are stronger than species differences, and some teams are worth keeping together. 2 months later, graduation day arrived with ceremony and celebration. Representatives from dozens of worlds gathered to watch the newest class of coalition officers receive their commissions. Sarah stood with her classmates in the main assembly hall, wearing the uniform of a junior tactical officer. Beside her, Zixtar wore the insignia of a navigation specialist, his skin glowing bright blue with pride. Admiral Thexori addressed the graduating class from the main podium. "You are not just officers," she told them. "You are bridges between worlds, ambassadors for cooperation, and guardians of peace. The galaxy is vast and dangerous, but it is also full of wonder and possibility." She paused, her gaze finding Sarah in the crowd. "Some of you have already learned that true strength comes not from what you can destroy, but from what you choose to protect. Carry that lesson with you as you explore the stars." After the ceremony, Sarah and her teammates gathered at their old table in the dining hall one last time as cadets. Tomorrow they would report to their new assignments aboard the Coalition starship Times Harmony's Edge Asterisk, beginning their careers as the first official mixed-species tactical team in Coalition history. "Are you nervous?" Zixtar asked, as they shared their final meal together at the academy. Sarah looked around the table at her friends. The brilliant Kilari navigator who had become confident and strong. The telepathic Altarian who bridged minds across species. The steadfast Golem who provided unshakable support to his teammates. "No," she said honestly. "I'm excited. We're going to see things that no one has ever seen before. And we're going to face challenges that no one has ever faced. But we'll do it together." Yolandra's golden skin shimmered with contentment. Together is better than alone. Together is better than alone. Kexorth's deep voice added the final word, always. Outside the dining hall windows, the stars waited patiently for their next adventure. But inside, 4 friends from different worlds prepared to face the galaxy as a team, carrying with them the lesson that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from fighting alone, but from standing together with those who need protection. The bullies were gone, the hierarchy had changed, and the galaxy had learned something important about the power of friendship and cooperation. But most importantly, Sarah had learned that being human meant more than just surviving. It meant using that survival instinct to help others survive as well. And in a universe full of dangers and wonders, that was exactly the kind of human the galaxy needed.